the world was far more complicated than he had imagined. After the immediate crisis was temporarily resolved, David took Millie and left the Colosseum, but they were stopped by the staff as soon as they walked out. It turned out that when the long-haired boy had taken out the assassins just now, he had accidentally been seen by a passing staff member, who had mistaken David for the long-haired boy's accomplice, and, just like that, he was arrested on the spot by the local police. The police chief confiscated all his documents. It was clear that David would arrive in Rome before long. Just as David was trying to figure out a way out, a middle-aged woman suddenly walked in. After speaking, the woman left without looking back. It turned out she was David's mother, who had left home years ago. She had come to warn him after learning that her son was in danger. Later, David found Millie in the corridor, and immediately took her to escape from the police station. Before long, the two of them arrived at the airport. David knew he was already in danger. After careful consideration, he decided to take his mother's advice, to temporarily put aside this budding relationship. Millie seemed to see his difficulties, so even though she was sad, she didn't press him further. Instead, she turned around and left with regret. David had already learned of David's escape. To everyone's surprise, he went to the small town and found David's father.
Quando è l'ultima volta che l'ha visto?
8 anni fa.
Vorrei parlare anche con la madre di David.
Sì, beh, anch'io. Se la trova, le dica che la saluto. Se sento qualcosa, le faccio uno squillo.
No, non lo farà.
No, non lo farò.
As they talked, David picked up the photo beside him. Staring at the woman in the photo, he seemed to remember something. At the same time, David followed the traces of spatial fluctuations and found the long-haired boy, and the boy seemed to have long guessed that he would come. He told David that this group of pursuers belonged to an organization called the Paladins. They had been hunting teleporters for many years, since at least the Middle Ages. In the eyes of the Paladins, teleporters were blasphemers who stole the power of the gods, and they existed to correct this kind of mistake. The long-haired boy also revealed that the leader of the Paladins was David. This man, in order to achieve his goal of hunting teleporters, wouldn't even spare the families of the teleporters. Upon hearing this, David's heart skipped a beat. A strong sense of unease welled up in his heart immediately. So he immediately teleported back to his home in the town. After pushing the door open, the house was eerily quiet, and his father was already lying on the ground, breathless. In despair, he immediately teleported to the hospital, but in the end, he still received the worst possible news. Even though David had never felt the love of a father since childhood, and their relationship had always been distant, but now his father had lost his life because of him. His heart was filled with remorse and guilt, and more than that, intense hatred for David. Before long, he found the long-haired boy again, proposing that they team up to fight against David, but the long-haired boy thought David was just a rookie, and saving him in Rome had just been a spur of the moment. With that, he turned around and teleported away. David was unwilling to give up. He reached out, grabbed the traces of spatial fluctuations, and followed closely. When he landed, he found himself on the bustling streets of Tokyo. Seeing that David had followed him, the long-haired boy didn't drive him away again. In fact, when he saved David in the first place, he had been looking to recruit allies. Later, the two of them arrived at the entrance of a Mercedes-Benz dealership. The long-haired boy planned to show him what it really meant to know how to use superpowers. The long-haired boy said that teleporting with a car was nothing. Someone once tried to teleport an entire building, but that person was later killed by David's men. The two of them messed around like this from day until night. The reason they made such a big commotion was to attract the attention of the Paladins. To take down David, they decided to split up and act separately. The long-haired boy, who had no family, was in charge of preparing weapons, while David teleported back to the town to find Millie. He had to make sure Millie was safe first, to prevent her from being killed by David just like his father. Millie was still upset about their breakup, so she didn't listen to a single word David said. Just then, the roar of a car engine came from downstairs. David leaned over the window and saw that it was David. In his desperation, he had to show his superpowers to her in person.
Millie, mi dispiace.
David's tone was filled with apology, while Millie was frozen in place, terrified by what she saw. Before she could recover from her shock, David had already arrived with his men. David didn't have time to explain much. so he took her and teleported to the long-haired boy's secret base first. But what David didn't expect was that, the moment they landed, David, who had arrived at Millie's house, took out a device. He sprayed a white mist forcefully into the air, and then pressed the high-tech tracking device in his hand. In the blink of an eye, ripples appeared in the surrounding air. To everyone's shock, David actually led his men crawling through the rift. David and the long-haired boy in the base were caught completely off guard, instantly overwhelmed by the attack. David himself was even entangled by high-voltage cables, pinned to the wall and unable to move. At this moment, David slowly walked up to him, saying that it was all thanks to David that he had managed to find the long-haired boy's hideout so smoothly. Then he slowly pulled out a dagger, planning to torture David to death slowly. At the critical moment, the long-haired boy arrived just in time, holding a flamethrower. Before the enemy could react, he used his teleportation ability to launch an attack. David had just climbed to his feet, but the next second, the long-haired boy vanished.
等他再出现的时候，竟然直接把东京的双层巴士移过来。
Riding a motorcycle, when he reappeared, he had actually teleported a double-decker bus from Tokyo over. This series of moves left David completely dumbfounded. Just as he was about to attack Millie, the long-haired boy picked up the flamethrower and sprayed it fiercely again, driving the terrified David back step by step. They thought the crisis was temporarily over, but unexpectedly, the director suddenly used a high-voltage cable to penetrate the space and drag Millie over. David immediately tried to come up with a plan, not knowing that this was a trap set by David for him. When David rushed over recklessly, he fell right into the elaborate trap David had prepared. In an instant, David was bound hand and foot by the high-voltage cables. But what David never expected was that the high-voltage stimulation actually unlocked David's stronger potential. He suddenly exerted his strength. The entire room instantly moved with him into the lake water. Just as everyone was about to drown, he moved the room again, teleporting it to the school library. Seeing that David was still hot on their heels, David had no choice but to rush over and pick him up, teleporting to the desolate Grand Canyon, leaving David there to fend for himself. After the crisis was temporarily resolved, David found his mother Mary based on the clues. It turned out that the reason she had been able to rush to the police station to save him was that Mary was also a member of the Paladins. What's more, David had actually had a teleportation experience when he was 5 years old. Mary had only two choices back then, either kill him or leave him. Obviously, Mary had chosen the latter. After bidding farewell to his mother whom he hadn't seen for years, David continued to travel around the world with Millie, and so the story comes to an end. Those who are interested can watch the original film Jumper. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let's meet again next time for more exciting movies.